Let's close our eyes and picture we're standing in the Uffizi in Florence, 6:30 in the morning before the crowds have been let loose. The guards are still yawning, the lights are low, and there she is. Venus, naked as the day she was born, floating towards you on a giant scallop shell like the most glamorous takeaway delivery in history. You look at her and something strange happens. Your pulse quickens, your mouth goes a bit dry, and you think, blimey, that's beautiful. Not just pretty, beautiful in the way thunderstorms are beautiful, or the first sip of champagne after you've won the lottery. That, my friends, is the power of Sandro Botticelli's Birth of Venus, painted around 1485, and quite possibly the sexiest painting ever made by a man who never married and probably never got close enough to a real woman to know what one actually smelled like. Let's get one thing straight from the start. This is not a Christian picture. This is paganism on steroids, smuggled into Renaissance Florence dressed up as classical learning. Venus, Aphrodite to the Greeks, has just been born adult, fully equipped, from the foaming genitals of her father Uranus, who'd been castrated by his son Kronos and chucked into the sea. Yes, you heard that right. The goddess of love is literally made from a cosmic sex crime. The sea foams, the bits float, and out pops perfection. Even by today's internet standards, that's a wild origin story. But Botticelli doesn't show us the messy bit. Oh no, he skips straight to the glamour shot. There she stands on her shell, part supermodel, part miracle, blown gently ashore by the wind gods Zephyr and Aura, who are having a right old snog while they do the blowing. On the left, flowers are falling like confetti at the world's most expensive wedding. On the right, one of the Hours, the goddesses of the seasons, is waiting with a cloak covered in flowers because apparently even the goddess of love can catch a chill. Venus herself, she's doing that modest little hand gesture, one covering the breasts, one the you-know-what, but it's the least convincing act of modesty in Western art. She's not hiding anything, she's framing it, like a celebrity on a red carpet knowing exactly where the cameras are. Now, look at her body. It's impossible. The neck is too long, the shoulders slope like a coat hanger, the belly is a soft, dreamy curve that no real woman has ever had after pasta and Chianti. This is not anatomy. This is longing made flesh. Botticelli has taken the medieval idea of woman, all S-bends and swooning saints, and stretched her into something new, the first modern beauty ideal. Before Venus, women in paintings were either Madonnas or martyrs. After Venus, every artist in Europe wanted to paint a naked bird on a shell. She's the original influencer. And the hair, golden, endless, moving like it's underwater even though she's on dry land. It wraps around her like liquid sunlight. You could lose a weekend just looking at that hair. Botticelli was obsessed with line. Look how every contour flows, how the outline of her thigh becomes the curve of the wave, becomes the edge of the shell. It's one continuous melody drawn with a brush. He painted on canvas, which was unusual. Most big paintings were on wood back then. And he used tempera, not oil, so the colours stay impossibly fresh. 540 years later, she still looks wet. But here's the delicious scandal nobody talked about in 1485. Who paid for this giant pagan pin-up? The Medici, of course. Specifically, Lorenzo di Pierfrancesco de' Medici, the cousin of Lorenzo the Magnificent. He wanted it for his country villa, probably to hang above the bed. The official story is that it's an allegory of beauty civilizing the soul, or some high-minded Neoplatonic nonsense cooked up by the family's pet philosophers. Bollocks to that. Lorenzo the Younger was 20-something, rich, and almost certainly trying to impress a girlfriend. This painting screams, I have taste, I have money, and I have ideas above the missionary position. Botticelli was the perfect man for the job. He'd started out painting sweet little Madonnas with round faces and chubby babies, but by the 1480s he'd fallen under the spell of Savonarola's opposite number, the Platonic Academy, that gang of posh Florentine intellectuals who spent their days translating Greek manuscripts and their nights trying to resurrect the old gods. Venus rising from the sea. straight out of Homer, polished up by a poet called Poliziano, who hung around the Medici court writing smutty Latin verses. This painting is the Renaissance equivalent of a concept album, yet there's something melancholy about her too. Look at the eyes. They're not looking at us. They're looking past us, as if she's already bored with being the most desirable woman in history. Botticelli knew the classical stories didn't end well for Venus. Adultery, jealousy, the Trojan War, the whole sorry mess. Maybe that's why her expression is so dreamy and distant. She's just been born, and already she senses the trouble ahead. A few years after painting this, Botticelli went off the deep end. Savonarola started preaching hellfire, the Medici got kicked out, and Sandro burned half his early paintings in the bonfire of the Vanities. He turned religious, started painting grim crucifixions, and stopped doing nudes altogether. The man who gave us the sexiest goddess in art spent his last years terrified of sex. There's a tragedy in that. But Venus, she survived. She survived the bonfires, the prudish centuries, the Victorian fig leaves. Napoleon nicked her for the Louvre for a bit, then she came home to Florence. Hitler apparently wanted her too. There was a plan to hide her in a salt mine with the rest of the loot. She dodged that bullet, and here she still is, floating towards us on her ridiculous shell, still making grown men and women go weak at the knees, because that's the thing about beauty. Real beauty, the kind Botticelli caught in one perfect, impossible moment. It doesn't date. Fashions change, morals change, religions rise and fall, but the sight of a golden woman riding a scallop shell blown by kissing wind gods will always stop you in your tracks. It's not just a painting, it's a spell. And 5 centuries later, the spell still works. So next time someone tells you art is boring or the Renaissance is just a load of old Italians in tights, take them to the Uffizi at dawn, stand them in front of Venus, and watch what happens. They'll feel it, the quickening pulse, the dry mouth, the sudden, ridiculous urge to fall in love with life all over again. That's what Botticelli did. He caught the exact moment the world remembered it was allowed to be beautiful. And we've been trying to get back to that moment ever since.